Ange Postecoglou is having a fruitful first season at Tottenham Hotspur, but with saying all that, he has encountered a number of problems, and problems is the key word of today, because I've contacted lots of different YouTubers and content creators to ask and answer the question, what is the biggest problem facing Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham and how can he solve it? Yes, similarly to my previous video on the channel about Ange Postecoglou's future at Tottenham, we're now talking about how can he solve certain problems at Tottenham Hotspur. You know, there's a few problems that have been mentioned in the mainstream media, so I wanted to get the thoughts of some Tottenham content creators and also other football YouTubers to see what they think of the topic. But before I get into the problems that the YouTubers have suggested, I've got a problem from one of the Sunny Talk Spurs members, and he got involved because he submitted it on the most recent Nice One Sunny podcast. So if you want to become a member of Sunny Talk Spurs, link is in the description down below. But the problem was submitted by the Belgian Hotspur, and he said the biggest problem at Spurs is the reactionary fans. I mean, if you're a reactionary fan, let me know in the comments down below. They are so starved of trophies that they have zero patience. I see the project at 3 to 5 years, and I think the biggest threat to success are the fans not sticking with plans and hounding out another manager at the first sign of trouble. I've said, you know, in some of my videos that not so much reactionary fans, but people got to keep the faith with Postecoglou. Sorry, not Pochettino. Really not Pochettino. They've got to keep the faith with Postecoglou because we can all see the vision. There just needs a few tweaks to the problems that will be mentioned later on in the video. But without further ado, let's get into the YouTubers, and we're going to start with the Tottenham Hotspur YouTubers in particular. But stay tuned because there's a special appearance from Mark Goldbridge. Privileged to have him on the channel.
Biggest problem Ange has to solve. I think if we're talking from like a tactical point of view, for me, it's maybe getting the players to know when to vary their attack. I think a lot of people sort of misunderstand Ange Ball when, you know, if things don't go well in a game, it's all about oh, he doesn't change his style, this, that, and the other. But if you look back at his previous teams, the idea is the attack is supposed to be so fluid to the point where you are doing different things. You might have a winger that takes on a defender, but you might also go through the middle with your attacking midfielders creating like your 8s and your 10s. So it is supposed to vary, and I feel like that isn't happening unless Ange makes substitutions. So I think that he's sort of got to drill that into the players a bit, that they need to vary it during the match while they're still on the pitch. But on a more grander level, I'd say the biggest problem, to be honest, has to be the mentality of the club. And I think he's doing a really good job of it so far. I think, look, let's be real, we haven't won anything for a long, long time. I think we need to get over that mental hump of, oh, can we finally win this trophy? Or if we're going to compete next year for the league, for example, or the year after, can we last the whole season? I think because we're in such infancy in his stage as our manager, we might not have that mentality yet, but you can definitely see throughout the season it's growing compared to previous years. Before, we were just happy to settle for top 4. We were just happy to be competing. Whereas Ange, in every single press conference I'm seeing, is instilling the thought of, we're not just going for top 4. Oh, you think Man United can catch up to us? Well, that means we can catch up to Man City, and so on and so forth. He's really trying to drill this mentality that we actually can win things going forward. So I think that's the biggest thing he has to work on, and I think he's doing an amazing job so far on it. And it just makes next season and the season after extremely exciting and something I'm looking forward to.
So the biggest problem I think Ange Postecoglou has to fix at Tottenham Hotspur is actually our front line. For me, when I look at it, I think we play as a bunch of individuals rather than have any sort of fluidity or any sort of movement between that front three. There's no real link-up play there. When you look at the likes of City, Liverpool, Arsenal, and then you look at the likes of us behind them, I think that's, for me, is the biggest area where we really need to improve. For the amount of possession that we have in terms of dominating games, we don't do enough with it. We actually do the hard part very well, which is actually sit the opposition back in the final third. And I'd make an argument, any winger, any striker would absolutely love to play in the Ange Postecoglou system with how often we sit in that final third. But I just don't think we create enough chances or knock on the door enough in games. And when you look at the times this season, we really do struggle to kill teams off. So for me, that's the biggest area where we really need to improve, is that front line.
Hey, Sonny, Jack here from the Irish Hotspur, and you want to ask me what is the biggest problem that Ange Postecoglou has to solve for Tottenham Hotspur? And for me, I think it's the forward line, more specifically, who can help out Sonny, who can step in and be the next talisman, the guy that can eventually, sadly, have to replace Sonny and be able to replace that goal output. We've been so privileged for so many years of having two world-class finishers in this team, Harry Kane as well as Sonny at the same time. Now this season, I think we're only dependent really on one world-class finisher. It'd be nice to get back to two, or at least two guys that we know game in, game out, we can at least have one guy on that pitch that is guaranteed to provide something, is guaranteed to make something happen. And I think that's what Ange Postecoglou has to look into. And could be a winger, could be a striker. It's up to him, I think, to decide what is the best for the team and what is the best for the formation and how he can embed them into this side. But that's what I think would be the biggest problem for Ange Postecoglou to solve. Tottenham Hotspur, who can help out Sonny?
Hi guys, Barnaby from the Spurred On podcast here. What is the biggest problem that Ange Postecoglou has to sort out at Spurs? I'd say the kind of the lack of winning, really. And I don't mean in terms of just games and trophies. I mean the lack of mentality within the club as to how to go about winning things. It's about getting over that line. And once you do that, you'll see lots of clubs kind of winning from positions where they don't even deserve to. And that's something that Tottenham haven't been able to do in the last few decades. So that's going to be the difficult thing. I don't doubt that Ange will take us to positions where we can win trophies, but kind of changing the mentality of the club and the players, giving them the freedom and the confidence to actually get over that line, that I think will be difficult and will be something that, you know, hopefully his experience allows him to drill into the players. Thanks so much, guys. Loving your work, Sonny.
How's it going, people? Hope you're good. So Sonny has asked me, what's the biggest problem that Ange has to fix at Tottenham? And honestly, I'd have to say, and bear with me, the fans. I think the fans, obviously we're very much, the majority of us anyway, are very much on board with Ange, on board with his tactics, his philosophies, and everything that comes with him. But it's not going to happen instantly. And I think people are quite quick to forget just how bad of a state we were in prior to Ange, and how quickly things have gotten better under him. And that's only under one window. So I do think, you know, if you think about our defence, one window prior, it was an absolute shambles. Bringing in Dragusin, bringing in Mickey van der Ven, might have even been a Dougie as well. It's completely changed the way, like, Spurs fans feel watching a team attack us. Like, the weight off the chest is drastic. But yeah, there are fans who I think, you know, they know Ange plays attacking football and they want success now, and that's just not gonna happen. You know, we're not gonna be able to challenge City and Arsenal and Liverpool just like that off the bat. So I think give Ange, I mean, I'm ready to give Ange all the time he wants, sort of thing, but give him, I'd say, 2 windows, maybe even just one, but I'd say for safety 2, and I think we'll be challenging up. Yeah, I think we'll be challenging for the league. Like, I don't see why we can't. You know, we've already got a very strong set of players. It's just about reinforcements now. That's all it is, and just identifying these key 1 or 2 areas each transfer window and spending wisely, which, you know, our stat-based transfer skills, I don't know what you call it, our stat-based scouting, should I say, is clearly proving to work that way. We've brought in some really, really talented players that no one really would have batted an eyelid at to begin with, that have proved essential. Mickey van der Ven, for example. So yeah, I think bit of a weird one, but yeah, I think that's what Ange is going to have to face as one of his biggest problems, is just keeping the fans on board. And yeah, just, yeah.
Hi, I'm Harry Scar, football content creator, YouTuber and podcaster, and today I'm going to be answering the question what I think is Ange Postecoglou's biggest problem that he needs to solve at Tottenham. It may sound really basic of mine, but for me it'd be dealing with set pieces defensively, and just set pieces in general. I think it's a big problem because, you know, I don't worry about us with counter-attacks with the pace of Mickey van der Ven when he's fit. I don't worry about us having a plan B necessarily or being able to break teams down. I think it will tire eventually, especially in the summer where you rebuild that, having a very strong second team, almost like the Manchester Cities have, and Arsenal and Liverpool developing. So I don't think that will be a problem. But dealing with set pieces defensively will be a big issue, because no matter how you play attacking or defensive football, set pieces is a big part of it. We've seen Arsenal improve, in particular offensively, and that for me is why they're in the title race. You take that away and they're not in it. So improving set pieces both offensively and defensively. So that's my thoughts.
Hello, yes, it's me, Holly from Holly's Hotspurs. Thank you, Sonny, for asking me to give my thoughts on what the big problems are that Ange has to overcome at Tottenham. To be perfectly honest with you, there's a few, to say the least. First one is kind of convince the fans, win them over. I think he's done so already a little bit, but as we know, as Spurs fans, there's a few of people that are turning their heads already to say that Ange Ball isn't the answer, which kind of leads on to the next one. He's then got to convince the Premier League that this is the way to play football, the Ange way. But like we said, we've seen it under Klopp, we've seen it under Guardiola, that it takes time to embed the style of football you want to play. And it does come with success if you keep at it. Another one is the summer transfer window. As we all know, Mr. Daniel Levy doesn't like to part way with his monies. I'm just hoping that Ange can sway over Levy in the summer transfer window, because we need a few more recruits to make the system work properly. The next one, I think, is probably one that's in recent weeks, is the fact that we need to learn to defend corners and set pieces, because that's really starting to wind me up. But apart from that, that's pretty much all. But yeah, again, thank you for asking me, and come on, you Spurs.
Just a quick video for Sonny, who's asked the question, what is the biggest problem that we need to solve? Well, the biggest problem Ange needs to solve at Spurs. For me, it's the quality across the front three. We play a very attacking system. It involves high energy. It involves a lot of passing, a lot of possession, pinning teams back. And when we do have possession, that's where you need two things: creativity and players that are clinical in front of goal. And I think we lack creativity, and I think we lack that killer edge across the front three. Yes, Heung-Min's son is good at it, there's no doubt. But when I look at the other players, Timo, Kulusevski, Brian Hill, Brennan Johnson, even Veliz, who we don't know much about, do any of them really have the consistency to take on a man and beat a man and create the overload? Do any of them have the consistency to take chances? We're good at tap-ins, we're good at scoring from 6 yards, but what about long range? What about beating a man and then curling one into the bottom corner? We don't seem to have a variety of goals in us. It seems to be the same thing over and over again, and I put that down partly to a lack of creativity, and partly we lack that killer instinct. I don't think any of our front three, except Son, have got the ability to play in this system with the consistency required of creativity and being clinical, if we want to win a Premier League title, or if we want to win a European trophy or an FA Cup. For a top four race, yeah, no worries, we can do that. But if we want silverware, glory, we need a complete refresh of the entire front three, and the players that come off the bench, the quality that they're going to offer us. So that's the biggest problem he's got to solve.
Hi, it's your boy Ashmatic from Spurs Kings TV. Big up, Sonny Love Spurs. The question is, what is Big Ange's biggest problem moving forward? For me, it's the front three. We need to be a lot more clinical. We need to be a lot more creative, especially if we're going to have a lot more of the ball. Decision making needs to happen a lot more earlier. We need to see the picture before it even happens. And I think that's when we play a little bit lethargic, a little bit too slow, and we just need to move the ball quicker. If you're going to do pass, you need to know when to execute, when to finish, when to have that end product. And that's my opinion. Is it a quality issue? I personally think, yes, in some instance. Is it a bit of a coaching problem? Players getting used to the tactics, etc. I think it's a bit of both. But for me, ultimately, we need to be clinical in that final third and take advantage of those teams when they're in that low block. We have a chance to score. We need to do that. Guys, big up every time. Bless up. And I'll see you on the other side. Come on, you Spurs.
Hi, Sonny. Hope you're well, my friend. The biggest problem I think Ange Postecoglou has to solve at Tottenham is winning over the fan base. I think there are a lot of problems externally that are going to stand in the way of him building success at the club. For example, overtaking the likes of Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool. But I think the biggest problem he has is making sure that he keeps all of the fans on side. Because naturally at this point, every Tottenham fan is frustrated that we aren't winning silverware and we we aren't challenging for major competitions. And that's going to continue to happen until we do actually win something. So I think Ange has to find a way to make sure that he keeps these fans on side while he is building his project, while he is building his squad, and while he is getting us to play better football. I think it's not a quick process. I think it's going to take a couple more seasons yet for him to really have what he wants at the club and have us challenging where he wants to be. But yeah, I think that is going to be the toughest thing for him to solve while he's at the club.
Yeah, the Tottenham fans say the similar sorts of things. They mention the forward line, then maybe that we need a striker. Set pieces are mentioned as well. And also mentality. Mentality is key. That's brought up quite a few times. But that's what the Tottenham fans think. But what do the other fans think of various other clubs in and around the Premier League?
What is the biggest problem at Tottenham Hotspur right now? Well, I think when you look at all the problems at Tottenham, you've got to understand that they are very early into their rebuild under Ange Postecoglou. He's not been there a year, and when analysing Spurs, you've got to remember this is the rebuilding stage. And I think the biggest problem at Spurs is probably just not having the personnel to play Ange ball consistently. Beginning of the season, Ange showed you what he's capable of doing. He has improved players, he has developed players, but there's been a little bit of a drop off in certain key players, and I think it's about bringing in the players so there's depth if other players drop off, competition and building upon. I think Spurs are in a rebuild stage. It's probably about getting this summer right, probably bringing in a top striker, because I personally think Son is maybe better on the wing, as good as he's been this season, and then if you also maybe bringing in another good winger, so that's some genuine competition for Son or Brennan Johnson. And Brennan Johnson's been good lately, but having a player like Brennan Johnson come off the bench, then you've got good bench depth, which is something Spurs have maybe lacked with compared to the other top teams. Probably getting a top number 6 in as well, and then maybe someone who's going to give Porro and a Dougie some genuine competition at fullback, because I think that's what Spurs need. They're in a rebuild. The biggest problem is probably not having the players to play Ange ball, which you'd expect less than a year into the rebuild. But Ange has progressed Spurs, and Spurs look better compared to a year ago, and maybe getting the right players in a year's time, if they look better, they'll be on track in their rebuild.
Hello, I'm Mark Goldbridge. So what is the biggest problems that Tottenham need to solve? Well, to be honest with you, I struggled with this because I think for a first season, Ange has done a great job. I look at their squad and their bench at the moment, and it's about as good as you'd expect it to be in season 1. So I suppose their biggest issue is going to be, is it a one-year bounce? Can they build on the momentum in the summer? I think they'll get Champions League football, which is incredible in a first season. They've shown consistency. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with European football next year as well. So I think for Spurs, for me, it's more about can they continue with the form of this year into year 2, which can be difficult. We've seen that with Ten Hag. We've seen it with De Zerbi as well. So yeah, it's building on the strong foundations. Can they do that in year 2? Thanks.
I think the biggest challenge, to be honest with you, that Ange is going to face is changing the mentality at Tottenham Hotspur from a team that aren't able to get over the line in the cup competitions to a team that are. We can talk until we're blue in the face about them competing for top 4 spots. We saw them do it under Pochettino. They've got to start concentrating on cups, FA Cups, Carabao Cups, Europa League or Champions League. Focus on those and get over the line in one. Once the hoodoo's broken, I think the floodgates might open a little bit. I think that is the toughest thing for Ange Postecoglou, focusing on a mentality shift.
Okay, so I talk Spurs. What does Ange have to do next year to improve? To be honest, I think there is also a level to be said of just being consistent. I think that's sometimes a lot harder to do, to be quite honest, especially if injuries happen or whatever. So stay consistent with what they are at now. I'll try not to shake the camera anymore. And also, I think set pieces, that's a big one right now for Spurs. Hiring a set piece coach, whatever it might be, especially defending it. Look, Spurs aren't a tiny side, really. They've got some good people in the air, especially in the likes of Romero, Mickey van der Ven, whatever it might be, whether it's stopping that kind of rush around the goalkeeper or whether it's going out of zonal as well. I'm never a big fan of zonal. Chelsea do it quite a bit as well, and we've been really poor with set pieces this year. But yeah, I think it's probably along those lines. And then also focus on one of the domestic cups. Seriously, fully focus on it. The Carabao Cup, I think Ange was poor not to focus enough on it as other clubs may have. Like, we've spoken many times about Spurs' trophies and so on and so forth, and I'm not obviously going to make a joke about it. But I do think the Carabao Cup is a really big one that like Ange could just help out the perception of the club by really focusing on that. He didn't put out a strong squad against Fulham when you guys got knocked out to that. So really focus on one of them, if not both of them. Obviously, of course, you were in the Champions League as well, most likely. So yeah, I think those kind of things, those three things, consistency, set pieces, and focus on one of the domestic cups would be a really good year next year as well. So yeah, there you have it.
I think the big problem that Ange Postecoglou needs to solve going forward for Spurs is these slow starts. All too often, they are struggling to get going in the early part of games. We've seen that run of 4 straight home wins when they were trailing in each and every game and had to come back to win. So I don't think that's sustainable in the long term. It's going to be about him finding a way to get more complete performances from his team.
Hey everybody, Angelina here. Now, what is Ange Postecoglou's biggest problem that he's got to solve at Tottenham Hotspur? I mean, there are a few. Just kidding. I think for me, it's got to be the mentality. When you look at Spurs' squad, there's only a couple of names that stand out as real winners that have won the big silverware. I'm talking Copa America, World Cup, etc. And I think that Big Ange needs to really convert this team into believing that they can be winning the big silverware. Premier League, FA Cup, even challenging in Europe. And I think that's a really big hurdle that he's got to overcome, is getting these players to realise that, the momentum that they've managed to build this season can be carried forward, and that Spurs can be going into competitions, going into the league, not with people expecting them to somehow fumble it, but for them to be serious trophy contenders, because it's about time that you guys won a piece of silverware.
All right, Sonny, how are we doing? Now, I imagine a lot of people will talk about goal scoring, how you could potentially do with a more clinical striker. But for me, what Spurs or Ange Postecoglou need to sort out is their consistency of performance across an entire 90 minutes. They've been really slow starters in recent weeks. I think prior to last night and that goal from Brennan Johnson against West Ham, their previous 12 goals had all come in the second half. They've left themselves too much to do on occasion. They've had to come back in games against Luton and Crystal Palace. They've had that heavy defeat to Fulham recently as well. So I think in this blip, this almost mini blip that Spurs have been through where their performances have dipped, it's not finishing an entire 90 minutes with a consistent performance.
The biggest problem that Ange Postecoglou will face at Tottenham is Tottenham. It's the mindset. They need to get out of this mindset that they're bottle jobs and that they can't get the job done. We've seen it under previous managers, Conte, Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santos, back in the day, Tim Sherwood, Andre Villas-Boas. There's never been that internal belief apart from when Pochettino was there that the club could do anything. They are their own biggest enemy in terms of their own self-doubt. When Klopp came to Liverpool, we were in the same boat after departing with Brendan Rodgers, and he said the perfect line, from doubters to believers. And that's what Tottenham have to do. The players, the fans, the board, they all have to get behind this system, and Postecoglou's got to be the example of belief in the squad. He's got to instill a confidence in them, similar to the way he plays. It's very attack-minded football, full of confidence, and he has to give that confidence to the players to make them believe that they can be competing with the teams like Liverpool, City and Arsenal.
Sonny, hello mate. Really good question. There's so many cliches surrounding Spurs. Is Richarlison good enough? Is that a problem that Ange Postecoglou needs to solve? Is this starting 11, apart from probably the back line, the midfield as well, and the front three, it would take away Son from the equation? Is it good enough to compete, for the title? Do you still need more reinforcements? The problem, in my opinion, and I've said it for months, that Ange Postecoglou needs to solve, and it's just so unoriginal, but it's true, mate. It's so true. It's just the trophy drought. I feel like you could have given it a really good go this year, especially in the Carabao Cup. I mean, obviously, Spurs fans will see that badge and that scarf there and be shaking in their boots because, in my opinion, he got it completely wrong in the Carabao Cup. The early stages, losing to Fulham, and Fulham reached the semi-finals of the competition, losing to Liverpool. And I really think if Ange fielded a really strong side in the opening rounds of the competition, then you could have had the opportunity of beating Liverpool in a Carabao Cup semi-final and playing Chelsea in the final, mate. So I think the only thing that he needs to fix on that front is kind of just like showing competitions like the Carabao Cup like a bit of respect. You did have strong players on the bench, and it was such a weak team that he fielded. That would be my only thing, because as soon as he lifts a trophy at Spurs, he literally goes into folklore. Like, he's in the history books, because it's been since about 2008. It's been such a long time, and Spurs and Spurs fans saying how big of a club they are. They're starved of silverware. So that, and honourable mentions, Son's the only world-class player in that team, mate. And if you want to be competing for the title, there will need to be major reinforcements that are brought in, of course, like new investment that's just come into Spurs as well. So, I mean, if PSR and stuff like that isn't killing all of transfers and whatnot, surely you'll have some new signings coming in the summer. Cheerio, pal.
So Sonny has asked us what Ange's biggest problem right now is to solve at Spurs.
We're not thinking about right now, though. I think most of Spurs' problems lie ahead.
Yeah, the season's pretty much over. We're talking the summer and onwards.
The summer and onwards. For me, the major problem that is facing Ange Postecoglou is the management of expectations going forward. So for me, Spurs have had a very, very good season. Football is looking 10 times better than it was at this stage last season. They've covered with the loss of their nomadic striker, Harry Kane. For me, the issue is going to be managing that expectation going forward, because Spurs, whilst they're maybe about to get top 4 this season, you have teams lying in wait. Because I don't think Aston Villa will go away next season.
No.
I think teams like Chelsea and Man United, you can only keep them away for so long.
Yep.
They can only spend so much money before they are back battling for that top 4.
Newcastle as well.
What can Spurs do in the summer? Do they have enough clout?
I said that last time.
To make moves in the transfer window.
Yeah. I think on a similar vein to what you said, I think, like I mentioned last time, I think the Spurs issue that I think is going to occur is keeping hold of their best assets. Be that Ange, be that a James Maddison, a Pedro Porro, a Udogie. There's a lot of Mickey van der Ven. There's a lot of good players there that if Spurs want to kick on, Ange needs to keep hold of these players. And a problem could be bigger fish circling these assets.
I mean, one of the Spurs' strongest parts of their squad is their wing-backs, their left-back and right-back. Pedro Porro and Dougie, probably one of the best combination wing-backs in the league. So to be able to keep a hold of them against teams where the market isn't so big is going to be a major thing as well.
There's always a bigger fish.
Thanks, Sonny.
Yeah, similarly to the Tottenham fans, they say a lot of, the same sort of stuff. They say we're ahead of schedule, but mentality comes up again. Consistency comes up again. And also trying to improve on these slow starts. But I can see all these problems. Some are short-term, some are long-term. And I think Ange Postecoglou is going to iron a lot of them out. The mentality issue, he said it in recent quotes that he wants to change his club's mentality to stop it from just being that sort of getting top 4 and being happy with it. He wants to push us all the way to achieve the very best. So I'll be honest, a lot of what I've heard today from these YouTubers, I tend to agree with. I think they are sort of, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. We can see Tottenham from an inside and an outside view, and we all tend to agree that these are the problems that are key and need to be sorted to push the club on. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you think is the biggest problem at Tottenham Hotspur? Can we overcome it? Is it a long-term or short-term thing? And how much do you back Postecoglou to solve these issues? But yeah, if you have enjoyed it, let me know by smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell, as well as you can become a member in the link in the description down below. And my next video will be, I'm actually going to the Nottingham Forest game, so if you're there, come and say hi. I usually am around the South Stand. I know it's big, but you can come and say hello, see if you can come and find me. And I'll be reacting to that game probably on Monday morning, so the next upload will be then. But until then, ciao.